The head is one of the hardest things to draw, and I want to go over one thing that you have to know to draw a better head, and that's how to get the perspective of the head right. The way we need to do this is by using a box, which I'm sure you've heard before, but I never hear people explain this correctly, so I'm going to tell you exactly what the point is of using the box. To start with, I need to explain what the purpose of boxes is. Everything exists in 3 dimensions, which are the height, width, and depth dimensions. These dimensions all exist perpendicular to each other. Now, the easiest to draw 3-dimensional form we can use to show this is a box. The box, of course, exists in height, width, and depth, and all of the planes are also perpendicular to each other. So, this perfectly defines 3-dimensionality. Every single object can be placed inside of a box, and this is what defines its position in 3D space. If we can only see the front plane, the object is facing us. If we see the front and one of the side planes, the object is at a slight angle. And if we're seeing the front, side, and either the top or bottom plane, it means that we're looking at the object either from above or from below. This applies even to objects that are rounded like cylinders. These objects don't have clear plane transitions like boxes, but they still exist the exact same way in 3D space, which means they follow the exact same logic as boxes. You can see this if you start playing around with lighting. If a box is being illuminated from the front, the plane that's most perpendicular to the light source is going to be the brightest, and then the plane that's facing away from the light source is going to be in shadow. With a box, there's going to be a very clear transition from the light area to the shadow area. Rounded forms function the exact same way. Even though the form is rounded and doesn't have clear planes, there's still a part of this object that's perpendicular to the light source, and there's a part of the object that's facing away from the light source. In this case, this is the point where the plane transitions from facing forwards to facing the side, meaning there's going to be a transition from light to dark. Exactly the same as a box, so even rounded forms follow the exact same 3-dimensional rules as boxes. The reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people think the head is a rounded form, which it is a little bit, and then they simplify it to a form like this. But even though this form is rounded, it still needs to follow the exact same rules as a box. So if you want to draw the perspective correctly, you can't just curve it and hope that it's correct. You need to understand how box perspective works. So this is why we need to understand how boxes work if we want to draw heads. And now I'm going to explain the rules for drawing boxes. There are 2 important rules we need to abide by if we want to draw correct boxes. The first one is that the sets of horizontal lines of the box will be converging to vanishing points that are on the horizon line, which is also known as the eye level. There are 2 sets of these horizontal lines. So you can end up with one vanishing point that one of these sets of horizontal lines will be converging to, and then the other set will be perfectly horizontal. This is 1-point perspective. Or you can have 2 sets of vanishing points, and of course each set will be converging to a different vanishing point. No matter how the box rotates, these vanishing points will always be on the horizon line, but they move along the horizon line according to how far the box is rotated. Now, the mistake that gets made a lot with this is that people don't make these lines converge perfectly to their vanishing points. Of course, if you're freehanding these without actually drawing the horizon line and placing the vanishing points, it's almost impossible to get everything to converge perfectly, but it has to at least be close enough that it looks right. The second rule is that the verticals of the box have to be perpendicular to the horizon line. Basically, the way this works is if we draw a box, we can follow these lines to figure out where the vanishing points are. Then we can draw a line between them, which gives us the horizon line, and the verticals of the box need to make a 90-degree angle with this horizon line. If that doesn't happen, the box will appear slanted. There is a scenario where this isn't entirely true, and that's when we're dealing with 3-point perspective. There's going to be a vanishing point below the horizon line in this case as well, and the verticals of the box will be converging to that horizon line. Because of this, when we follow these lines up towards the vanishing point, we can see that they're not perfectly perpendicular, but that's only how we perceive them. In reality, these lines are still perpendicular, so the line closest to us needs to make something similar to a 90-degree angle. Now, here's how to apply the boxes to the head. The head has a clear transition from front to side plane, which occurs right here at the cheekbone. This transition is almost a 90-degree angle, and because of that, we can treat the perspective similarly to a box. And even if it wasn't anywhere near 90 degrees, like for example, let's say the top view of the head looks like this, there is still a front plane, there is still a side plane, which means there is still three-dimensionality to this. So it would still follow box perspective. The main reason why this is important is we can draw a line from the eyebrows following the direction of the cheekbone, and this will take us to the top of the ear. This line determines where the ear is in relation to the eyes, as well as where the forehead transitions from its front to its side plane. Both of those things influence the perspective of the head. When we're seeing the head from below, the ear is a lot lower, whereas if we're seeing it from above, the ear is a lot higher. This is why this line is so important, because this tells us where the ear needs to be, and that's what defines the three-dimensionality. Now, like I said, the head follows box perspective. So if our vertical line does not make a 90-degree angle with the horizon line, the box will appear slanted, and that makes it appear flat. If we look at it from a top view, instead of the form appearing like this, it will look like this. You need to get this right if you want to draw three-dimensional looking heads, and the way to do that would be to train your intuition so that you can draw correct boxes. Okay, let's practice this now because I think that's going to make it a bit more clear. So what I recommend doing is first drawing a box, which you can use as your reference, and then you make a second drawing where you actually draw the head following this reference. Let's say we're going to draw a low angle. So to do this, I need to first draw a correct box. And like I said, to draw these boxes, you just need to train your intuition. So that's why you would also practice boxes separately a lot too. The box, again, doesn't have to have perfect perspective, because I think this is slightly off. This might need to be angled a bit more. But the perspective just has to be close enough to look about right. And then now, we can use this as a reference to draw the actual head. So we're not going to draw the head inside of this box. Because if you want to draw something inside of a box, especially an irregular form like the head, it's actually really hard. Because if we draw the head from the side, for example, it looks somewhat like this, and then if we draw the box around it, the box looks like this. So there's a lot of empty space here, there's empty space there, there's empty space in the back here. So if you want to draw that inside of a box like this, you first need to get the proportions of the box correct, and then you need to be able to place the head perfectly inside of it. That's not happening unless you're really good at perspective drawing. Now we can use this box essentially as our reference to draw a simplified form of the head. So we have this first line that's going up this way. It's following the same vertical perspective as our box. We have the skull going back this way, which is following the exact same perspective as this top plane. We have the center line of the face, which sits perfectly in between both edges of the front plane. So basically we have the cheekbone here on this side, we have the cheekbone here on this side, and then the center line of the face is directly in between them. Right here we have that line which divides the head into front plane and then side plane. Then we can draw the jaw. One side we have the ear. Then here we have this line, which is the line that's going towards this vanishing point. And then we go backwards towards this vanishing point. And then I think the center line is very slightly off center, because I would recommend first deciding how wide you want the front plane to be, and that will let you place the center line exactly in the middle instead of doing it the way I did it, where I drew the center line first and then I decided how wide I wanted the front plane to be. Now let's try something similar, except we'll have the head rotated a lot more. So that means the side plane is going to become a lot more visible and the front plane is going to become way less wide. So we'll end up with something like this. So again, what we can do is draw the overall form of the head first. We have the verticals following the verticals of our box. Then when we draw the cranium, we need to go back this way. So we actually have the right three-dimensionality. There's another line going this way, which is the back part of the cranium. So that would be going this way. Then we go down, following that line. Then I recommend deciding how wide the front plane of the head is going to be. In this case, it's going to be around this wide. Then we place the center line here. We can draw this down towards the chin. Ear is going to be right over here. And then we have this line, which makes up the brow line. There are a lot of intuitive decisions you have to make when it comes to getting the proportions right, but everything starts with the perspective. You have to know how to get that perspective right to even be able to get a three-dimensional looking head. If you want to draw better heads, of course you need to practice how to draw the actual head, but the fundamental is the box. You need to be able to get this right if you want to draw three-dimensional looking heads. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Join our Discord server if you'd like to participate in the weekly homework exercises. You can also support the channel through YouTube memberships. And I guess I will catch you all next time.